Welcome to the leather card wallet tutorial. We'll be making the card wallet shown here using the following steps. Your kit includes everything needed for this project, all of the basics needed to get started. The first item is a template. This is the shape we will be using to make the wallet. The second is a chisel to make holes. Third is string. That's my big roll there. You may just have a smaller chunk of string in the kit. Next up is the chisel. This is how we can mark and make holes. An X-Acto knife to cut the leather itself, as well as leather stitching needles. For our first step, we will need the leather, our stencil, and the awl. That's AWL. What you want to do is line up your stencil so it covers the leather completely. You don't want the lines going over any edges. And you will use your scratching awl to trace those lines. Pushing down firmly, it's okay to break the paper because you want to mark the leather. These marks will be the guideline for our cutting. You can check as you go to make sure that your lines are appearing as you sketch. Whether you have one or two pieces of leather, you want to make sure that you trace over both sides of the stencil. Again, making sure that the lines of the stencil do not go over the edges of the leather. That way your pieces can line up. Next up, you're going to want to grab your X-Acto knife to get cutting the leather. I recommend using a cutting board or a surface beneath the leather to avoid scratching any surfaces, or you can do it freehand by holding the leather firmly. The leather should be thin enough where just one or two passes of the X-Acto knife will cut it. You can also use a straight edge to assist with cutting the leather. Once you finish cutting the outlines, you can work on shaping up the corners some more, but you will also have the opportunity to do this at the end once you line up and stitch the pieces together. In the next step, we're going to outline where we will be stitching. We will use the stitching chisel, which has two prongs spaced 4 millimeters apart, to trace the edge of both pieces of leather, doing so by holding one tong against the outside edge of the leather, creating a line on the top face of the leather for where we will mark our stitching holes. Do this for both pieces of leather on all sides except for the tops. Starting with one of the pins on the edge of the piece as shown, press down to mark your first hole. Use this first hole as a starting point to insert the chisel, marking your second hole, and continue down the outline you made, marking evenly spaced holes along the way. Before starting on your second piece, take the first piece and identify which side you started on, and make sure to align it with the side you're starting on for your second piece. This way, when you thread it, the holes will match up and be even. The way I did this was flipping over the first piece, and whatever side the first hole lined up with, that's the side I started on for the second piece. Repeating what you did with the first piece, start with one pin of the chisel on the outside edge of the outline, marking your first hole by pressing down, and then move down the outline, pressing down to mark where the holes go. Here, I'm using a mallet on top of a cutting board, which is an optional way to create the holes that go all the way through. This isn't necessary, but will save time later if you're able to use these tools now. With all of the holes marked, we're now going to use our awl to completely pierce each hole through the leather. You want to ensure that you can see the metal tip of the awl, so that way you know that putting the needle through will be easy. With all of the holes punched, you can start to see how our card holder is going to come together. Next up, we'll learn how to thread the sewing needle and start sewing the pieces together. You'll start by grabbing one of the needles in the kit, as well as one end of the string. First, get the braided and waxed thread through the eye of the needle. You want to have 3 to 4 inches come through. Once through, you want to pull the thread to be longer than the actual needle and untwist the thread to expose space between the individual threads as part of the braid. Feed the tip of the needle through the openings of those threads, making a second connection. Pull down, and you can see it creates a tight connection between the thread and needle that's not too big, making it easier to go through the holes of the leather. Using the other needle, repeat the same process with the other end of the string. You will end up with one string that has a needle on each side. The ideal length of the string is 4 to 5 times the length of the stitching pattern. Start by putting the 2 needles in the first 2 holes of the top piece. Then, run these 2 needles through the corresponding holes of the back piece. At any point, if you find the needles are hard to pull through the leather, you can spin the needle 360 degrees to loosen it, or come back through the hole with the awl again. Once both needles are through, pull them tightly so the 2 pieces of leather are together, and try to have each thread be the same length. We are now so close to having a finished card holder. The following steps will be repeated for the entire stitching process. Take the first needle from the first hole and run it back through the second hole, where the second needle came out. Pull it all the way through, creating your first full stitch. Using that same needle, push it through both of the third holes on the pieces. This will be the first half of this stitch. To complete the second half of the stitch, return to the back side, taking the needle we haven't used yet, which should be coming out of the second hole, and push it back through the third hole where the first needle has already gone through. Here you can see how that looks. Once through, pull both strings tight to complete the stitch. You've now completed your second stitch. Now onto your next stitch again, repeating the same process, taking the needle from the front side, pushing it through the next hole, in this case the fourth, and pull it all the way through to the back. Again, to finish the stitch, we take the trailing needle on the back side, push it through the hole that only has the one string going through it, in this case the fourth, pushing it through the holes all the way through to the front side. Repeat this process all the way to the last hole. Pull each string tightly after each stitch. If needed, use the awl to puncture holes that might not have been punctured properly the first time. Getting through this in one sitting can be tough, so feel free to take breaks. Once on the last stitching hole, you should have one needle on each side of the piece, and you're going to thread the needle just through that corresponding side. Do the same for the needle on the opposite side. Once both threads are through, pull them tight. You're now going to tie 2 to 4 knots depending on your liking of the thread, pulling tight on each one. The knots themselves should be hidden beneath the last stitch of the leather. Once finished, use your X-Acto knife to cut away the extra thread. Congratulations, the sewing part is done. You can now continue to use the X-Acto knife to cut off any extra and shape the card holder how you please. Congratulations, you have now made your first card holder. Thank you for watching, and leave any tips and feedback in the comments below.